Here to discuss, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, former federal prosecutor Barrett Berger, and Lawfare senior editor Anna Bower. Ken, we're going to start with you. The White House hasn't confirmed this settlement effort, but explain what Trump's team appears to be seeking from the Department of Justice and why.
Good morning, Ali. Well, we've confirmed this settlement effort at MSNBC, if not the actual number of the damages that they're seeking. They've made some claims, two separate claims, one involving the Russia investigation and one involving the Mar-a-Lago investigation. In both cases, Donald Trump is claiming that the government violated his rights and his privacy. And that's the first thing here, is that there is just no evidence that that happened. Both of these investigations were properly predicated. They've been reviewed by independent fact finders, and they've been found to have been carried out properly. And in the case of Mar-a-Lago, Judge Eileen Cannon, who ruled in favor of Donald Trump on some very controversial issues, never ruled that the search of his Mar-a-Lago compound was improper or violated his rights. So that's number one. There's just no evidence to support these claims. The other issue, of course, is who's going to decide whether the claim should be paid out and how much. By Justice Department regulation, it's the Deputy Attorney General, who's Todd Blanche, who represented Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case and other criminal cases, and then the head of the Civil Division, Stanley Woodward, who represented one of his co-defendants in Mar-a-Lago. But of course, Donald Trump is making clear in some new comments that they're not really the deciders here. He's the decider. Take a listen.
I don't know what the numbers are. I don't even talk to them about it. All I know is that they would owe me a lot of money, but I'm not looking for money. I'd give it to charity or something. It's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision, right? And, that decision would have to go across my desk. And it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? But I was damaged very greatly, and any money that I would get, I would give to charity.
This whole episode just underscores how the idea that the U.S. government can engage in independent fact-finding and do things separate from what Donald Trump wants appears to be a very tenuous idea, if not out the window at this moment, Ali.
I think that's exactly right, Ken. But Barrett, even though the White House isn't confirming this outright, yes, Ken is right that our teams have confirmed large parts of it. But then you've also got the president talking there, saying it's a decision where I'm paying myself. He also then says, I don't need the money. But if it's not about the money, then what's it about?
I think this is very clearly about President Trump wanting some sort of retribution for what he claims were, witch hunts against him that really haunted his entire first administration. We've seen this not only with these administrative proceedings that are really precursors to lawsuits, but in the indictments that we've seen of people like James Comey, who he holds personally responsible for being one of the people that started these investigations. I think these, proceedings show us a few things. The first is what a terrible idea ethically it is to have your former personal defense attorneys acting as members of your administration now. The fact that Todd Blanche could be asked to decide a motion like this after previously representing the president in these very proceedings, there's just no way ethically that he could do that with a straight face. So this, more than anything, exemplifies that very clear conflict of interest.
So, Anna, I will ask you about your text messages in a few minutes, but first I want to get you on this topic. The idea, as both Barrett and Ken have laid out for us, of all of the competing cross currents here. But typically, let's say on Earth B, if we're living in a vacuum, it's very hard to successfully sue the DOJ, right? So is there any merit to Trump's argument, and would he be owed restitution, put aside all of the different competing cross currents and reasons that people should be recused from this?
No, look, you're right that it is incredibly hard to sue the Justice Department for a number of reasons to get restitution for this type of thing. There are people who will spend decades in prison and then be released because there's some type of exculpatory evidence that is found or for other reasons. And then, they're not able to receive restitution, much less for all the reasons that Ken already explained, the fact that these investigations were properly predicated. I covered these cases. I know the facts very well and the background of these investigations. Even Judge Eileen Cannon, it wasn't that she dismissed Trump's case related to classified documents. performance because of any kind of, prosecutorial misconduct or that kind of thing. It was a very technical appointments clause issue. So, I think that it's going to be a very, very difficult here. Although, of course, as you have pointed out, there's these questions around the people who are making these types of decisions of who can get a settlement. And it raises all kinds of conflict of interest questions because those individuals may very well be the president's former defense attorneys.
Yeah, Barrett, we were just asking Anna to live on Earth B, where all of this is happening in a vacuum. But let's get squarely back to Earth A, where we are right now. If the Trump DOJ does approve a Trump settlement like this, what are the ways or the legal avenues to even challenge it? Do those exist?
They may not exist. I mean, the biggest check on this may be some sort of a political check. Remember, any money that is given out in a payment for this, comes directly from taxpayers. So there's not a specific fund that's put away for this. This comes from taxpayer money. And so there may well be political ramifications. Now, could groups try to file motions in court stopping this? Absolutely. But ultimately, the power to make these decisions lays very squarely within the Justice Department and within two individuals, as Ken said, Todd Blanche and also Stanley Woodward. So I don't know, aside from the very clear ethics issue, I don't know that there would be so much legal recourse. However, one would think there would be at least a little bit of political blowback from this.
And right before we all started talking, I sent a text in our Hill team group chat, just making sure I hadn't missed any Senate Republicans talking about the concerns that they had around a potential settlement like this one. And so far, we've only heard from one Republican senator saying that they would have to look into it. So the fact that there is not outcry in the political sense that you're talking about here, Barrett, I think is instructive about a larger theme that we cover in this current Congress and Republican Party. But Ken, I want to talk to you about the James Comey case as well, because his defense team is trying to get the interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan booted from this case. Where does that stand? And it strikes me that Anna had just brought up the way that the classified documents case was dismissed by Judge Aileen Cannon. There's a parallel potentially here, right?
Yeah, there absolutely is. Obviously, he's made the motion to get the case thrown out on the grounds of vindictive and selective prosecution. But this other motion attacking the appointment of the U.S. attorney may be the one that has more potential for success because there's already precedent for it. It's a technical issue here. There was a previous U.S. attorney who had served the 120 days provided for in the statute for an interim U.S. attorney. So the question is, does the clock start again with Lindsay Halligan? The case law may be unsettled on this, but a couple of judges have already ruled against the Trump administration in other jurisdictions on this. So, and here's the thing, if this case gets thrown out on those grounds and that's upheld on appeal, I don't think they can bring it again because the statute of limitations has elapsed. It's been 5 years since James Comey uttered those words to the Senate.
I think that's a really important thing to point out of why this case is the one that the administration needs to hang on to because of that statute of limitations piece. And of course, that's where the initial push to actually bring these charges came from in that direct message, or rather public message that should have been a DM from the president to the attorney general. Anna, if we're talking about DMs, I have to talk to you about your text messages. Of course, from hearing from Lindsay Halligan, she was already controversial, but that was before she texted you out of the blue discussing grand jury matters in her other high-profile case, that of Tish James. Can you talk to us about that? And I know the DOJ reached out to you on whether or not this was off the record, which we know you can't establish after the fact. But have they expressed any other concern about the substantive things that she talked to you about?
Yeah, so just for background, I received a series of text messages from Lindsay Halligan over the course of, Saturday and Sunday a few weeks ago, in which she, took issue with some of my summaries that I'd written of a New York Times article. And we went back and forth about, the reporting on this grand jury testimony. And it was a very strange and quite remarkable exchange because this is just not the type of thing that a sitting United States attorney usually reaches out to a reporter about. It concerns an ongoing prosecution. And some of the messages that she wrote seemed to touch on grand jury matters, which, there's a policies and laws that prohibit the disclosure of grand jury secrecy. So for that reason, prosecutors usually don't go go anywhere near talking about those kinds of issues. In terms of the outreach from DOJ, as you mentioned, that yes, they've taken issue, or Lindsay Halligan did, with whether or not it was on the record. To that, I will say I encourage people to read the messages themselves. It speaks for itself. There's never at any point right before we went to publication that she suggested we were anything but on the record. The Justice Department has also accused me of threatening to leak. Again, I think the messages speak for themselves. We are doing reporting and doing journalism. So that's what I'll say about that.